Hi, everyone. It's winter in Los Angeles, so it's really cold. But that being said, I'm very excited to talk about a subject that's kind of near and dear to my heart. I'm proud that selling vintage clothing is sustainable fashion and is good for Mother Earth. And in the past 10 to 15 years, sustainability has pretty much been a buzzword. You know, every year, over 25 billion tons of reusable textiles are thrown into landfills. And you think about what those textiles could be doing if we had the creativity, the time, and the inclination to either reuse, repurpose, upcycle. I mean, there's really any number of things that we can do. We're going to look at a few designers that have made sustainability their focus and their goal. And I'm going to start with going back to the last century, where Japanese workers would take their beautiful indigo colored, or indigo dyed, I should say, fibers, and create a textile called Boro, B-O-R-O. If you look that up, you'll see that there's some Boro textiles selling online in the neighborhood of close to $30,000. So it's really curious that at this point in history, people are beginning to appreciate the old. This is just a piece of a Boro textile, and you can see that it utilizes about 8 maybe different garments that were cut up and sewn together. And what I love about the Boro pieces is not only indigo, which is one of my favorite colors, but I'm actually going to read from something I dug up online. It's a class of Japanese textiles that have been mended or patched. As a philosophy, it treats breakage and repair as part of the history of an object, rather than something to disguise. Boro grew out of a necessity as opposed to aesthetics. It means ragged or tattered, and it was favored by 19th and early 20th century rural Japanese. The underlying idea is that once the clothing was made, it had to last the owner's whole life or even transcend it. Can you imagine if that was the philosophy of clothing today? It's something to think about, the integrity of a garment. So I will start with repurposing, and that is, this is a piece I picked up in Asheville, North Carolina, at a wonderful store where the woman who works there is actually a dye expert. But she took probably, I would say, 10 or 12 scarves. And her name is, I've got her label, Gigi Renee. She has a vintage clothing store on one of the main streets in Asheville. And this is my dress. I love it. It flows, it fits, it's comfortable. But if you can see how she utilized scarves to create this irregular hem garment. Another example of repurposing, a lot of people see these amazing Japanese kimonos. A lot of them are hand embroidered. This is actually machine embroidered. And they sell for practically nothing because they're huge and they're too long and they're not a practical design in today's application. And he cut the kimono so that you can see a good part of the embroidery. I mean, you're taking something that is not relevant, that nobody wants, and making it into something that's incredible. And then I thought we should go into you're not going to believe this one. This amazing tulip hemmed skirt and kind of a dominatrix bodice is made entirely of bicycle tires. What I love about this is people think of clothing with textiles, but use your imagination. I bought this in Mexico. It's made entirely of the flip top of soda and beer cans, and it has it's reminiscent of Paco Rabanne. The use of different colored cords to connect really adds and enhances, because I bought one earlier that was just one solid color. Doesn't hold a candle to this one. And materials to use, the sky's the limit. But then we move from repurposing to upcycling. And one of the best designers in today's day and age for upcycling is Johnson Hartig, who owns and is the creative director of Libertine. He has, for as long as his career has been, I think he started in 2001 with a partner named Cindy Green. She's no longer a part of Libertine, but he started off by taking vintage pieces and doing graphics on top of it, and then he began to embellish. He was so creative that his career started because somebody from one of the major department stores in New York saw him wearing one of his pieces, asked about it, and ordered, literally right from him in person. And over the years, he's been a fan of many high-profile people, including Karl Lagerfeld. So what he has done, I have a few examples. This piece is a piece of Libertine. It's an actual Norman Norell gown that he embellished with crystals, rhinestones, and painting. These purple dots are painted on the garment. And, he took a piece that was beautiful in its own right, somewhat conservative, and he made it totally relevant in today's day and age. Two other examples of Libertine are this knit Valentino dress, probably from the late 80s, early 90s, where he completely covered the front with decorations, and the back is plain, which makes complete sense because when you sit on it, you can wear the embellishments off. Then this incredible coat is a Lilli from the late 50s, early 60s. I've actually had this coat several times over my 40-year career in vintage. And in the off-white areas, he decorated front and back with rhinestones and colorful things. And then we move from Libertine, and Libertine is available in many, many stores and online. And Johnson's story is quite interesting, but we're going to keep moving. Because we don't carry a lot of men's clothing, I thought it would be great to include this Watanabe man shirt, which has iron-on decorations. This is dated 2001, and there was a whole collection of Watanabe men's shirts that have the iron-on additions. A lot of people are not familiar with this company. It's called the Great China Wall. Late 90s, early 2000s, they would take T-shirts, sweatshirts, over-dye them. You can see this is over-dyed with at least 3 colors. And then they stenciled and then embellished with prong set rhinestones. These are different than the iron-on that Libertine uses. It takes obviously a lot more time to do the prong set. But if you're do-it-yourselfers, there's 2 ways to go. While we're on the subject of prong set, I don't know if any of you recognize Matisse's painting of the dancers, but I have an amazing friend who owns a vintage clothing business called Regeneration. She is an artist first, and for my 65th birthday, she invested 400 hours into prong setting these rhinestones into this coat. It's a Valentino coat, and although the coat on its own was beautiful, I would say it was probably a 4 on a scale of 1 to 10. This is now like a 50 because it's just a work of art. Walking, living work of art. The front has the embellishments as well. So as far as upcycling, this is an extreme. And you can't suffer from ADD. You'll never get it done. I included also companies that have sustainability in the front of their brain. This is an older piece by Project Alabama. Natalie Chanin started this company, and she actually hired women in the mountains that were struggling and created what was very similar to sewing circles of the past. This piece is using organic cotton, and it's 2 layers where they cut out the pattern, highlight the edge, and then tack it down with top stitching. It is a fantastic piece of what I would consider American folk art. And if you can find Project Alabama pieces anywhere, buy them, because in its day in the stores, these were very expensive, and rightfully so because of all the handwork involved. If you flip it on the inside, you can see all the hand stitching. And I wanted to also say that what I love about upcycling, repurposing, is my attraction to vintage clothing in the very beginning was a way for me to express myself with the clothing that I put on my body. And I don't like to necessarily wear branded clothing. I want to make things my own. And with upcycling, this is a fantastic tunic blouse from the 1970s where someone clearly loved Christopher Robin. And they embroidered many characters from the book on this shirt. Last but not least, it's not just about textiles. It's also about jewelry. And there's a period called the Brutalist period. And things are really kind of rough and not finished. This belt is made with probably a tin base, but there's coins from around the world, vintage glass, and then these ball-bearing chains. I don't know, this would take a level of sophistication as far as using a soldering iron. But I recently acquired this whimsical necklace from a posting I saw on Facebook. It came from Bulgaria, which I just am so amused by the fact that I bought something from Bulgaria, and it's all broken bits of jewelry. There's a cat and beads, probably from a broken necklace. And it's all based on a luggage tag, a leather luggage tag. So, you know, it's just fun to be creative. I wanted to mention that the dress that I'm wearing, which is all hand embroidered from India, is actually a dress that was made out of a sari. And saris are wonderful to repurpose because you get yards of fabric. I don't remember how many yards, but there's a lot of material to work with. So I love this. I love the way it was constructed. And hopefully that'll give you an idea to work with. We'll begin with the definition of upcycling. It says, upcycling in very simple terms is taking something and making it better. It's the reuse of an item that will still be used in the same way, but it looks new and improved. Repurposing, on the other hand, is taking one thing and reusing it as something else. So I wanted to also mention that there are so many designers and huge corporations that are making sustainability as part of their mission statement. Stella McCartney has, I think around this time last year, had an article on her launching a UN Charter for Sustainable Fashion. We have some articles and references that we'll be including at the very end of this episode if you're curious to follow up and learn a little bit more. I would caution you to realize that there are many companies that are trying to jump on the bandwagon of the popularity of sustainability, and they're doing what's called greenwashing. But it's very easy to figure out who's BSing and who's actually doing it. I think LVMH recently said that they wanted to go, they have a sustainability initiative, which I think is incredible because of the power of that mega corporation. So many companies that are really making an effort to help planet Earth heal. Eileen Fisher is one of the rebels in this area. She started back in 1997, and she has, I think, is one of the few companies on this planet that is as close to zero waste as possible. I love reading articles about her company and what she's done and what she's doing. She's buying back her clothing, any of the waste from cuttings of creating the garments. They actually create insulation with just great information. Patagonia is another company that is buying back and also very sustainable. And if you're old enough to remember Imitation of Christ, they, the two art students, created a collection that was performance art, and it became fashion as well. And they utilized recycled pieces of clothing in their collection. In LA, we have a company that has gone viral over the past, 8 years, Reformation. And yeah, I mean, the list just goes on and on. So I'm going to get ready for this week's show off, but before I sign off for now, I want to remind you that we will have resources at the end along with the subscribe button, so please subscribe to our channel. And in this week's episode, in the description, we are going to have links to a lot of the resources to companies that are sustainable and some of the things that I made reference to. This week's show off is meant to hopefully inspire you, and that is, we talked about this wonderful 1977 Timmy Woods bomber jacket made out of a Japanese kimono, and we have a Japanese kimono that would be the perfect piece to use to create something like this. I know it's kind of sacrilegious in the sense because it's in perfect condition, and personally I wouldn't whack this one unless it had some major damage. But you know what, if it's not being used, if it's not being sold, why not repurpose it and create something that you can wear and adore? Which brings me to one last point, and that is, I absolutely positively think that altering a garment is okay so that it fits you properly, as long as it's not a masterpiece or haute couture, or couture, depending on who the designer is. But yeah, so I mean, in this case, it would be quasi-sacrilegious. If it doesn't sell in 2 or 3 years, I probably will end up converting it to this silhouette. So that's it for this week. Don't forget to subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. That's it. Bye.